if as a sign of your decency, you would be willing to release him to us and we'll bring him back to the United States.
Gonzalo Lira's death was never mentioned, not even once. Even after the fact that Carson had mentioned Gonzalo previously in his Twitter show. He was not in the mind of Tucker Carlson and Vladimir Putin, the two people Gonzalo admired the most, because
The Facts Hunter.
Hello everyone, this is a Facts Hunter. Gonzalo Lira had a couple of achievements under his belt. He was a Dartmouth graduate, a published author, and a film director. These types of credentials suggest that this man was intelligent and well-educated. And this is the reason why so many people who don't really know Gonzalo Lira's full background are quick to believe in the unverified rumors that the California-born of Chilean origins was tortured, blackmail, and murder while in custody as he awaited his court date inside a holding jail in war-torn Ukraine, a country with an institutionalized prison system rooted in the old Soviet Union. But are these rumors real or just conspiracy theories? Gonzalo Lira's past is well documented in dozens of old Chilean newspapers and magazine publications that are currently available in the Digital Library of Chile. By reading these publications, we can create a profile that once overimposed on top of a profile similarly made from the countless hours of videos he produced for his YouTube channels. We can detect a number of patterns that suggest that Gonzalo Lira, despite all of the achievements previously mentioned, was not as intelligent as one would imagine. Based on the information that we have about him, we have learned that Gonzalo Lira, despite all of his credentials, was not intelligent enough to survive the rough conditions found inside a prison of a third world country, let alone one that is currently going through an existential crisis such as a war. To have a better understanding of the life inside a Ukrainian prison, we can take a look at two documentaries found here in YouTube. Both of them were filmed years before the 2022 Russian invasion. The documentaries in question are Behind Bars, Colony 8, Sitomir, Ukraine, World's Toughest Prison, and Behind Bars 2, the World's Toughest Prison, Colony 100, Kharkiv, Ukraine. The link of these documentaries can be found in the descriptions down below. Since Gonzalo was arrested in Kharkiv, the best illustration we have of Gonzalo's short life inside a prison can be described by the introduction of the Colony 100 documentary, which describes Kharkiv as follows. Kharkiv, its 1.4 million inhabitants make it the second largest city in Ukraine. Once an important Soviet industrial center and armaments producer, Kharkiv is now a victim of the economic crisis. Everyday criminality has been growing due to the poverty and lack of opportunity. Younger and younger people are turning to theft and drug dealing as the only way to earn money. The prisons, overcrowded, and the lack of economic opportunity is reflected in the recidivism rate. 70% of all released prisoners go back to jail at some point. Based on this information, we know that Gonzalo, a man born under the sunny skies of wealthy Burbank, California, was not going to survive the rough conditions of a Ukrainian prison. I mean, let me put it this way. Back in December of 2023, I uploaded a video with an update on Gonzalo's criminal trial. In this video, which I uploaded less than a month before Gonzalo's death, I finished by stating that Gonzalo was a dead man because he was suffering from a nasty case of pneumonia during his first winter inside a Ukrainian prison. I knew this because I spent hours studying Gonzalo's life from the publications found in the Digital Library of Chile. From my studies, I knew that Gonzalo had been raised in a privileged family that had never had to endure harshness such as lack of food or living accommodations. He was born with a silver spoon in his mouth, and there was very little chance that he would have the mental and physical stamina to endure life behind bars in a Ukrainian prison. And the guy was no athlete. The only sport he ever mentioned he practiced was squash, which is racquetball for rich people. But what's most important to mention is the fact that the Ukrainian authorities knew that Gonzalo will not survive life in prison. This is why, after Gonzalo was arrested for the first time, instead of sending him straight to prison like the Ukrainian authorities did to over 400 plus other people who also broke the same laws as Gonzalo, he was given the luxury of being subjected to house arrest.
Yeah, and I know I'm smoking way too much, man. I know. Give me a break. I'm under tension. I mean, this is a fucking dangerous city. And you can ask reasonably, why the fuck are you staying? Well, two reasons. Number one, I can't leave the country because the SBU has told me that I can't leave the country until my case has been, my case has happened, as it were. I'm supposed to be prosecuted for I don't know what. But since I have to be prosecuted, I can't leave the country. And if I try to cross the border, I will be arrested and I will be put in prison. So which do you prefer? You know? That's one reason why I'm not leaving. And the other reason, quite frankly, is that I want to see what happens.
That's right. Gonzalo was not the only person arrested for breaking the law of spreading Russian propaganda under martial law. But his American passport made him a special case who was sent home and was told not to publish any more Russian propaganda while living in a country that was being invaded by the goddamn Russian army. This is something that none of those Russian propagandist channels ever mentioned when talking about Gonzalo. He was given special treatment because he was an American citizen. This is the reason most of his videos were filmed with him and a wall behind in the background, because he was not allowed to go outside of his apartment. But Gonzalo, being the spoiled rich brat that he was, defied the orders given by the Ukrainian government and was finally sent to jail after a year of his first arrest, when the Ukrainian government finally ran out of patience. And here's another gem that nobody else cares to mention. Gonzalo was released 2 months later under bail, and there was a strong possibility that he would have been released again under house arrest if only he had shown to court for his scheduled court appearance, and if he would have shown remorse for his actions and requested leniency under the promise that he would obey court orders from that point on. But instead, he listened to the suggestions of other criminals he met in prison and decided to try to escape to Hungary and seek political asylum. By doing this, Gonzalo ruined his last chance to spend his prison time outside an actual prison. What an idiot!
Inmates live in large communal accommodation blocks. Wake up is at 6 o'clock sharp. The prisoners then have exactly 10 minutes to get ready for the morning roll call in the yard. Maxim Doriliu has now been in prison for 5 years. He was convicted of assaulting a police officer. He has 4 more years to go. 4 years in which every day is the same as the next.
Ну як, що, встаємо, умиваємося,
Get up,
зарядка,
have
потім
breakfast,
камбус,
and then go to
потім
work.
після камбузу робота.
Now, here's a question. Is it possible that the Ukrainian government wanted Gonzalo Lira dead? The answer is no. And the reason is simple. Because Gonzalo Lira was not of significant importance. And what proof do I have for this statement? Simple. There are tons of Russian propagandists on the internet. If one dies, two will fill its place. Many people claim that Gonzalo was a reporter, but that's another lie. Reporters have to follow certain criteria in order to work for a reputable agency that will vouch for their stories. And the only agency that will use Gonzalo's unverified claims was RT News, the #1 Russian propagandist media controlled by the Russian state. But the biggest proof that Gonzalo was insignificantly unimportant was the fact that during the Tucker Carlson's interview with Vladimir Putin, the only reporters that were mentioned by Carlson himself were the two American reporters that were arrested and are currently in custody by the Russian government.
I just got to ask you one last question, and that's about someone who's very famous in the United States, probably not here, Evan Gershkovich, who's the Wall Street Journal reporter. He's 32, and he's been in prison for almost a year. This is a huge story in the United States, and I just want to ask you directly, without getting into the details of it or your version of what happened, if as a sign of your decency, you would be willing to release him to us and we'll bring him back to the United States.
Gonzalo Lira's death was never mentioned, not even once. Even after the fact that Carlson had mentioned Gonzalo previously in his Twitter show. He was not in the mind of Tucker Carlson and Vladimir Putin, the two people Gonzalo admired the most, because certified reporters matter. Gonzalo Lira was as valuable to Putin as a T-90 tank. Putin doesn't care about losing one of those obsolete models because he has plenty of them. He has plenty of tanks as well as Russian propagandists to spare.
Let's go back a little bit. Let's talk about Vladimir Putin. Okay, Vladimir Putin is a very capable leader. Vladimir Putin, he is, for all intents and purposes, what you would call an ethnic nationalist, but he is not an imperialist.
On January 12th, Gonzalo Lira passed away in a hospital at the age of 55. His death was confirmed by the United States and Chilean governments. As mentioned at the start of this video, a flood of new attention was brought to this story, many of whom were critical of the US's involvement in the war effort.
Lira, with his work, was committing acts of journalism. Let's contrast the silence on the case, for example, to the Russian detention of Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich.
They martyred Gonzalo, declaring him a journalist and praising his work as a filmmaker. And with that, I only can laugh at how a story can so easily get spun to be so one note. Was Coach Red Pill detained for free speech and treated poorly in prison? Yes. But was he some noble and respected journalist? No.
Which is kind of weird, isn't it? I mean, poor Gonzalo, he was tortured and blackmailed. Shouldn't that be international news of the most importance to Putin's war campaign? Or maybe they both knew it's all BS.
Or a show. You said a serious talk.
I mean, shouldn't Putin make a case about Nazis torturing and killing the sons of bankers?
Sorry, buddy.
No.
You're talking to a banker's son here, okay?
Well,
Don't they want to know who killed Gonzalo Lira? Or better yet, why he didn't survive life inside a Ukrainian prison? These two questions will be answered in this video. And we're gonna start with the second question first. Why Gonzalo Lira didn't survive inside a Ukrainian prison? As I already mentioned, Gonzalo Lira was not tortured or murdered because he was not important. He might have been bullied by other inmates, but never tortured on the direct instructions of the SBU. And I'll explain why this is the case. When Gonzalo was released in 2023 and filmed his attempt to cross the Ukrainian-Hungarian border, he made several disclaimers where he explained that he was tortured and extorted while in prison.
While I was in CISO, I was extorted for a great deal of money, $70,000 to be precise. It was 7 other prisoners and myself. And as soon as I arrived, they beat the shit out of me. And they tortured me that time. It started on June 21st at 1 p.m. and it lasted 30 hours. It included beatings, it included sleep deprivation.
These two claims were debunked by separate sources. The torture claim was debunked by people like former UN weapons inspector and convicted sex offender Scott Ritter and George Eliasson. As these individuals stated, the torture claims were absurd because Gonzalo claimed he suffered from broken ribs, yet he had no problems riding his motorcycle hundreds of miles from Kharkiv to the Hungarian border.
We do know he claimed to have broken ribs. We do know that he claimed to ride a motorcycle for 1,400 miles with broken ribs. I couldn't walk 14 steps with broken ribs, you know?
The second claim of torture was of having the whites of his eyes scratched with toothpicks, which is also a bogus claim, as this type of torture would have left him with significant pain and possibly even an infection due to the lack of sanitation inside a prison cell.
While asking me if I could still read if I had just one.
2 of these thugs held my head, and one of them used a toothpick to scratch the whites of my left eye. And the other guy, the guy who actually spoke a little bit of English, said, "You can read with just one eye, right?" Not gonna lie, that really freaked me out. Anyway, after about 30 hours of this, I realized that there was no escape for me.
Now, the part that I found suspicious is that after saying that, he didn't say anything about like what it did to him. So I don't know if we have any ophthalmologists in the audience or not, but he doesn't look to have an eye injury. He has his eyeglasses on, which is convenient that he's able to, you know, that was another thing he's able to have. Did you find that out? Can you imagine being scraped in the eye with a toothpick, but it not then leaving you enough of an injury to say anything about it?
When he was in prison, he talked about torture. Now, to the person that talked to him directly, he said he was threatened with a toothpick and the food was cold. That was a torture. Now he says his eye was scratched with a toothpick. Now, your eye heals faster than any other part of your body. It heals. But if you scratch it with a rough cut, and the flap develops because the flap's there because of the cut, which meaning the part of the cornea falls out, you're in a lot of trouble. His eye would not have looked clear. He would not have looked normal. He would have either had to have covered it to keep the light out. He would have been in a lot of pain. I know this because my wife had a scratched cornea about 25 years ago, had to have eye surgery. Now that's if the outside layer on the cornea falls over. Maybe he's lucky and that jagged edge healed itself somehow. Mended back together? I don't know.
Just take a look at his eyes in the videos. Can you tell which eye was scratched? Or how come he was able to keep his eyeglasses without them being broken by the brute prison inmates? The claims of extortion are also debunked by 2 simple facts. The first fact is that Gonzalo lied during the filming of his video.
While I was in prison, the SBU looked through my accounts and they realized that I'm not poor. Okay, I don't want to characterize it in any other way, but I have access to a lot of funds because I was fortunate enough to earn a great deal of money as a writer when I was very, very young. And so the SBU had assumed that I was just some poor schmuck, but when they saw my accounts, they realized that I wasn't a poor schmuck. They got the prisoners in CISO, in one of the 4 cells I was in, the last one, the worst one. It was 7 other prisoners and myself. And as soon as I arrived, they He beat the shit out of me. By the way, the guards came in because they do a nightly check-in to see that everything's copacetic, you know? And the thing is, I saw that these guys had bribed those guards, bribed them with cigarettes and other things, because there's no money in the prison, but there are, you know, little perks, little this and that, knickknacks and whatnot. And so the guards who did the nightly check-in were on the take, and they were in league with the gangsters, the thugs, in my prison cell. It was possible for me to access a PayPal account that I had. Now, a PayPal account, it had quite a bit of money. It had $143,000, 30-hour session. One of the thugs who had really hurt me, I mean, he hit me pretty badly, especially on the chest. He hit me like right here on the sternum, repetitively and so hard that it left this huge bruise. And by the way, the cell boss, the guy higher, berated him for having left a mark on me, because of course the kind of torture that they want to do doesn't leave a mark. That's the point of it. See, because if it leaves a mark, then it's evidence, you see? So anyway, that prisoner who beat me so relentlessly over that 30-hour stretch, after, you know, as we're trying to figure out a way to get this cash to these gangsters, these thugs, he came to me spontaneously and apologized. You know, it wasn't his idea, but he had to do it, you know, because he was a prisoner. He'd been in CISO prison for 2 years already.
So we just heard Gonzalo's description of what it's like to be inside a Ukrainian prison. Now remember, prison systems in Ukraine have the same institutionalized system because there is constant transfer of inmates throughout the country. Prisoners don't have difficulty adapting when they change prisons because they are all basically the same.
A 12-man committee of guards, doctors, and psychologists meets the prisoners.
Number 1. Number 2.
Men, first I'll explain the punishment for not following the rules.
Every new arrival goes through the same procedure.
Who are you?
I'm Alexander Alexandrovich. Born in 1975, I've done time in Colony 63 and most recently in Colony 309.
Okay. Take your things and go to the gate. Line up at each line you see on the ground.
Since they've all been to prison before, all 5 men know the rules that are in force in all Ukrainian prisons. Stand still at white lines, hands behind your back, and look at the ground.
Remember, Gonzalo claims he was in a cell along with 8 other prisoners who spent 30 hours straight beating him up. But remember, the prisoners were instructed by the guards, who in turn were ordered by the SBU to single out Gonzalo, and that one of the prisoners apologized to him after punching Gonzalo in the chest so hard it left a mark. Gonzalo, the same guy who claims to have a heart condition, survived 30 hours of torture by inmates who care so much for each other to the point of apologizing after beating someone up, because the real bodies are the SBU agents. So now, let's take a look at what it's like inside an actual Ukrainian prison by watching a small clip of one of the documentaries.
For the 40 guards working here, the day starts with a briefing. Every incident, no matter how small, is reported. Everyone listens very carefully. This information can be life-saving. The guards need to be ready for anything.
Cell 319. The detainee is mentally unstable and prone to self-harm. Cell 115. Feshenko is a suicide risk. Increased surveillance. The cellmate is depressed. Increased surveillance here too.
A shift lasts 24 hours in Ukraine's toughest prison. 24 hours spent
Mikhail begins his shift by waking the inmates of Sector 4, a wing for inmates who have committed mid-level crimes. A guard monitors this wing of the colony day and night. There is a huge fence, but otherwise, the prison looks like a normal apartment building at first sight. In contrast to the maximum security wing, the inmates here do not live behind bars. The door to the building even stands wide open. For this part of Colony 100 uses a different strategy, a much more insidious one.
Hi. Anything special? No, all quiet last night.
The idea? Self-monitoring. The inmates have responsibilities and keep tabs on each other. If anyone steps out of line, the whole group is punished for it. A cruel system, and unforgiving of any mistakes made by the handful of hardened criminals detained here. 8 men share 16 square meters. They work, eat, sleep in one room. Whoever loses the group's respect has a hard time of it. Andrei Zaika knows this well. He's been in Sector 4 for 3 years.
We're not a family. We don't care for one another.
That prisoner who beat me so relentlessly over that 30-hour stretch, he came to me spontaneously and apologized. It wasn't his idea, but he had to do it, because he was a prisoner. He'd been in CISO prison for 2 years already.
Andrei Zaika knows this well. He's been in Sector 4 for 3 years.
We're not a family. We don't care for one another, like at home. You're always with your cellmates, never alone. That's why I'm sometimes happy to get work here. It's almost like being in a factory on the outside. And you can tune out a bit during lunch. Otherwise, the worst is when I'm overcome by a yearning for freedom.
Walls painted purple, lace curtains. Sector 4 almost seems cozy. But appearances are deceiving. Inmates in this part of the colony also bear the full brunt of the Ukrainian justice system.
After Gonzalo was arrested at the border, he was brought to court where he made the claims of torture and extortion in front of the judge. And while talking about the extortion, he is on the record stating that the criminals who attempted to extort him never got the money because the bank transfer never went through. This is a contradiction from the statement in the video where he claims he had actually lost money to the inmates. We will come back to these court records later on the video. Now, Gonzalo attended private schools and the Legacy College, Dartmouth, and still he was underqualified to survive life inside a foreign prison. To make my point, I will use as reference the very informative book titled Forbidden Knowledge: 101 Things No One Should Know How to Do by O.M. Brooks. This book is very interesting and is full of information. For example, this book will teach you how to chase a giant tornado, how to beat a lie detector, or how to land an airplane in open water. But the relevant part in this book is Chapter 47, Tough It Out in a Foreign Jail. This is a lesson that Gonzalo never learned, even though he claims that he was very smart because he read a lot of books. But going back to O.M. Brooks' book, Brooks states 6 fundamental facts people have to know to stay alive in a foreign jail. And these are: 1. Contact your embassy. 2. The embassy's power is limited. 3. The only way the embassy can get you out is by direct intervention of the State Department. 4. Knowing the value of cash and cigarettes. 5. Learning the language and get to know people. And number 6. Keeping your head down. Well, to get started, Gonzalo claims that he was unfairly imprisoned because all he did was upload videos to YouTube, and that Ukraine is not a democracy because they don't have freedom of speech.
I mean, I want to emphasize this, speech crimes, saying things that the government doesn't like. Ukraine is supposed to be this big democracy, that it wants to join the European Union and because it has European values, European democratic values. What higher value does a democracy have than free speech?
This claim is absurd because of the fundamental misunderstanding that people have of what a democracy and freedom of speech actually are. Having democracy in a country doesn't mean you have absolute freedom in both actions and spoken words. The fundamental concept of freedom of speech in a democracy is the freedom for individuals to choose via a voting system what laws everybody will pass and obey in order to have a peaceful and harmonious life. Just think about it. In America, there are laws that regulate what people can say in public spaces. These laws are made to protect certain individuals from exposure to traumatizing language that can be grotesque and obscene. A person can be arrested in some places for violating decency laws. And this is a fact. For example, if we Google, what is the law of profanity in Texas? Penal Code 42.01, an individual can be charged with disorderly conduct if they intentionally or knowingly use abusive, indecent, profane, or vulgar language in public places, and the language alone can cause an immediate breach of peace. These types of words can include cursing, cuss words, or racial slurs. So, if the American state of Texas has freedom of speech, why would you be arrested for exercising your freedom of speech if you choose to use profane and vulgar language in a public space? Isn't it America a democracy with freedom of speech? Because in a democracy, people can use legislature to regulate speech. And just as the Democratic state government in Texas chooses to pass laws that protect little kids and fragile old ladies from listening to offensive, traumatizing language, the democratic government of Ukraine has chosen to protect its citizens from the poisonous lies told by Russian propaganda. Gonzalo Lira, along with hundreds of other people in Ukraine, broke these laws knowingly or unknowingly, and they were arrested for breaking these laws. So, in conclusion, different democratic countries have different laws, and Ukraine is a democracy regardless of what Gonzalo Lira and other Russian propagandists say. Fuck those guys. Moving on. Going back to the book, we have several steps one must follow in order to survive life in a foreign jail. Well, this is the end of this video. Thank you for watching part 1 of this series. Part 2 is out right now. And here's a quick preview of part 2, Gonzalo's failed attempt to escape to Russia.
As opposed to going to Russia, Kharkiv, after all, is 40 kilometers from Russia. It should have been easy, right? Well, no, because all that area is mined. There is no real spot where you can easily move, not without a guide, not without somebody who knows what they're doing. I also looked into the possibility of somebody helping me out.
Dugan explains that in July 14, 2023, right after Gonzalo was released from Ukrainian jail, Gonzalo contacted Dugan, along with multiple other contacts, who offered him a chance to escape Ukraine by being smuggled into Russia. If you like the videos, help the channel grow by clicking a like and a subscribe. Share the video and help fight Russian propaganda. Gonzalo Lira might be dead, but there are still plenty of pro-Russian channels spreading misinformation out there. In the meantime, this is a Fox Hunter. Thanks again for watching, take care, and bye for now.